Mom wants me to come back here for New Year's.
It was my first New Year after marriage, and my husband suddenly told me that. Although I expressed my desire to visit my own parents, my husband flatly refused. On top of that, my mother-in-law told me, "The bride lacks self-awareness. Such a lazy daughter-in-law." She criticized me in such ways. My husband always takes his mom's side, no matter how much I try to talk to him about it. I've had enough. I can't stand playing this family game anymore. To avoid any further involvement with my in-laws ever again, I'm going to push them to the limit. My name is Tiara, and I'm 28 years old. I got married to Mark, whom I had been dating for 2 years. Our newlywed life is going smoothly. Since we both have full-time jobs, there's no uneven burden of household chores on either of us. I didn't want to be solely responsible for housework just because I'm a woman, so I made sure to actively involve my husband in it. Both our work and personal life are reasonably fulfilling. I'm also thinking about having children once things settle down a bit more. About a month after getting married, we were suddenly summoned by my in-laws. Well, summoned might be a slight exaggeration. At that time, I just thought we were invited to my husband's parents' house. Before getting married, I had gone to my in-laws to introduce myself, but I was too nervous to engage in a smooth conversation. Since we were invited this time, I hoped it could be an opportunity to get along better with my mother-in-law. With such light-hearted feelings, I headed to my in-laws' place. However, the reason for being summoned there was something unimaginable. Upon arriving at my in-laws' house, I was ushered into the living room. As soon as I sat down with my husband, my mother-in-law's voice flew out. "Tiara, what are you trying to do? Why don't you go make some tea?" "I'm sorry." Caught off guard, my mind couldn't keep up in the heat of the moment. I found myself apologizing without much thought. I had assumed, perhaps mistakenly, that even though it was my in-laws' place, I would be treated as a guest. I wasn't expecting a lavish reception or anything, but I never imagined I would be taken advantage of like this. "Tiara, you're letting the tea steep too long. You're supposed to keep your teacups warm." My mother-in-law constantly sighed while making me watch tea. Neither my father-in-law nor my husband said anything. If she has so many complaints, she could just do it herself. I admit I'm not great at making tea, but I don't want their standards forced on me. Then, on another day, just as I was planning to clean the house, my mother-in-law suddenly summoned me. In a hurry, when my husband and I rushed to my in-law's place, my mother-in-law was already in a foul mood. "Why didn't you bring even a single souvenir? Usually, when you're going to visit your parents-in-law's house, you should bring at least a piece of cake. Shouldn't you bring at least a small gift?" My mother-in-law gave me a sermon out of the blue. I didn't have any plans to go out today, and it was suddenly decided that I'd come over here. "I'm not asking you to make excuses. Wives these days are so quick to swear at their mother-in-laws, aren't they? Oh my God, my son got a really bad wife." "I'm sorry." Even if we engage in such conversations, my husband and, of course, not even my father-in-law come to my defense. It's not that I want them to protect me. I just wished for someone to stop my mother-in-law's one-sided and unreasonable behavior. After being lectured by my mother-in-law, I quietly spoke to my husband. "Hey, could you tell your mom too, Mark?" It was decided suddenly today that they would come, so preparing a souvenir was impossible from the start. Then my husband sighed, looking bothered.
"Well, shouldn't you buy something in advance just in case you decide to go anytime?" I agree with my mom. Don't you think you're also at fault? What came back from my husband were unjust words blaming me. Is he joking? Why does he have to take his mom's side, even in this? Of course, my impression of my husband dropped. Just after a few instances, I developed an aversion to my mother-in-law. After that, I was regularly summoned, and they would impose their way of doing things on me. When I go to my in-laws' house, I end up doing all the household chores. I prioritize my husband and in-laws in my actions.
Independence Day, Thanksgiving, New Year's, etc. I always spend them at my in-laws' place. Honestly, it's at a level where I can't help but wonder, what era is this? Even I, who usually handles things well, have become quite afraid of going to my husband's parents' house. It was the first New Year's since we got married, and my husband said,
"Come back here for the New Year,"
he told me. Huh? Wait a minute. If that's the case, when will you visit my parents' house?
It might be a bit tough this time. Let's decide the plans after the New Year. Isn't that fine?
What's that about? We promised to visit each other's parents with the same frequency, didn't we? I couldn't help but get frustrated with my husband's carelessness. He responded with a reluctant tone.
Ugh, you can't be helped now, right?
Why are you sighing now? We made a clear promise a while ago. Yes, both my husband and I were the type who wanted to visit our own parents regularly. That's why we rented an apartment right in the middle of both our parents' homes. We decided to visit our respective parents with the same frequency. But when I checked, we had already been to my in-laws' house 6 times, while we've only visited my parents once. According to my husband, this time, he said we should stay at his parents' place from the last day of work until the 3rd day of the new year. I couldn't stand such nonsense. I demanded from my husband. I want to at least visit my parents' place sometime between January 1st and 3rd. Then my husband said,
"Ask my mom."
So I called my mother-in-law. When my mother-in-law answered the phone, she began saying something right away. "Tiara, you're in charge of the New Year's dishes, okay?" Understood, but on one of the days until the 3rd, I will definitely visit my parents' place, so please keep that in mind. I'm counting on you with that understanding. When I stated so clearly, my mother-in-law exclaimed, "Huh?" with a surprised and slightly outrageous voice. "What's that? I can't believe you put your own family first. You're not being a good enough daughter-in-law." She lectured me for an hour over the phone and I was exhausted. I complained to my husband about it.
Mom just wants you, Tiara, to be a good daughter-in-law for us. She often says she wants you to be a suitable daughter-in-law for our family.
He responded casually, and my husband's obtuse personality became another factor exhausting me. In the end, we spent the period from the end of the year until January 3rd at his parents' house.
It's your first New Year's after getting married, so prioritize your in-laws.
Reluctantly, I did just that as advised by my mother. During my stay at my in-laws, I worked like a maid. From preparing meals to cleaning the entire house, doing laundry, taking out the trash. I had to do everything on my own. If I asked my husband for help, "Tiara, this is a wife's job, okay? Mark is usually tired from work, so it's only natural to give him a break during the New Year's holiday, right? You're really thoughtless, huh?" I was scolded by her. I work as a full-time employee too, you know. Thanks to you, I couldn't rest at all during the New Year's holidays, you know. While I wanted to retort in my mind, I didn't want to stir up trouble during the New Year. It was the first year of marriage, so I forced myself to accept it. I managed to make it through New Year's at my in-laws' house. It wasn't until sometime after the New Year that I was able to show up at my parents' house.
I'm tired, so I'll be waiting at home.
Since my husband said something heartless, I ended up going to my parents' house alone. Around this time, my distrust towards my husband began to grow. And of course, there's my frustration with my mother-in-law and father-in-law, but more than that, it's my husband who doesn't take me seriously when I talk to him about it. I was fed up. Even after the New Year, my mother-in-law kept badgering me. When I started refusing to go to my in-laws' house, they started calling me every day. In the morning, I would wake up to about 10 missed calls already. Curious, I would return the calls, only to be greeted by my mother-in-law's furious ranting. "Finally awake? You lack awareness as a wife. Wake up at 5 a.m. every day and prepare a nutritious meal for Mark." Even if I come home a bit late due to overtime, I get scolded mercilessly. "Mark told me, didn't he? I can't believe you're a woman working overtime. A wife who doesn't come home earlier than her husband is disgusting. You should put your family first. This heartless daughter." I actually earn more than your son. In fact, I contribute more to our expenses. How many times I wanted to say that, but I managed to hold back and just replied with an insincere sure. Gradually, I stopped answering my mother-in-law's calls and started deleting voicemails without listening. This continued for about a year, and once again, the dreaded year-end arrived. As expected, my husband called me.
Mom insists you come back for the new year.
Pushed by him, I firmly told my husband this time. Not this year, I can't endure it anymore. Not a maid, you know. Despite that, my husband grumbled unhappily.
Hey, Tiara, don't upset Mom, okay? You're my wife now that we're married. Just show a little consideration for my family relationships.
Huh? What's that? You're the one who hasn't even shown your face at my parents' house. Besides, I made plenty of effort to build a good relationship with your mother.
Mom's always mad at you because you haven't done it, right? Try a little harder.
Try a bit harder? His words made it seem like I was entirely at fault. In my trembling anger, my husband delivered the final blow.
Let me tell you something. My mom gets mad at me because you're a failure, okay? Do you understand?
At this moment, the dam I had barely held back finally burst. A failure? Am I at fault? I've been trying so hard to please your parents, putting up with so much for your sake. I took a deep breath and looked straight at my husband. I'll cut ties with your parents alone. I won't see your father and mother again. He seemed momentarily surprised, but perhaps he realized it was futile to say anything to me now. Surprisingly, he agreed easily.
Yeah, got it. It's totally fine. I'll spend New Year's alone.
Since then, the relationship with my husband has been tense. Conversations at home have significantly decreased, but honestly, I couldn't care less. This year, for the first time in a long time, I can spend the New Year at my parents' house. That fact made me supremely happy. When I arrived at my parents' house, my mother asked me worriedly,
Tiara, is everything okay with Mark's parents? I can't help but worry.
It's fine. I made it clear to him that I won't be involved anymore.
Really? Well, if that's the case.
Despite her words, my mother seemed somewhat uneasy. She's naturally concerned about my strained relationship with my in-laws. While enjoying the comfort of my parents' home after a long time, I left the housework to my mother and relaxed. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Coming! I hastened to the entrance, and there stood my husband. Huh? Why? Caught off guard by the suddenness of the situation, I was left in a daze. My husband's expression seemed worn out. Although I invited him into the house, my husband remained silent. Growing impatient, I demanded an explanation. Hey, what's going on? Weren't you supposed to go to your parents' house today? Finally, my husband, with a heavy expression, slowly began to speak.
Mom said to bring you, Tiara.
Huh? Again? How persistent can a mother-in-law be? Despite my exasperation, I confronted my husband. I told you, I won't go to your parents' house anymore. You agreed when I said I'm cutting ties with them, right?
Yeah, but my mom's furious, saying it's absurd for a daughter-in-law not to visit.
I don't care. I can't endure your mother's harassment, nor can I ignore your indifferent father, so I won't meet them again. When I asserted this, my husband looked troubled.
That's a problem. Mom says you came into this family as a daughter-in-law, so think about your position a bit.
Daughter-in-law's position? Ridiculous in this day and age. Expressing my anger to my husband. Enough. I didn't marry you to be conveniently used by your parents. In-laws who only bully their daughter-in-law. A husband who doesn't protect his wife. I refuse to continue dealing with such heartless people. This might be the first time I spoke so forcefully. My husband is freaking out and shaking his shoulders, but this wasn't enough. The humiliation I endured until now was beyond comparison. If you continue to side with your mother, I will divorce you.
Divorce? You're kidding, right?
I'm serious. Just being a wife has caused me so much pain. With a husband who bows to his mother and offers no help, I will never be happy. I'm much better off being single. Seems like he finally realized I'm seriously considering divorce. My husband turned pale. Suddenly, he received a call, and his expression changed in shock. At that point, I knew immediately that the caller was my mother-in-law.
Hello?
My husband responded with a pitiful voice. My mother-in-law is screeching and screaming over the phone, and I can hear her clearly on the other end. Growing impatient with his flustered state, I took the phone from him. "Oh, Mom, it's me. No matter how much my husband tries, I won't come to your place anymore." "Huh? Aren't you our daughter-in-law? I won't allow that." My mother-in-law, not to be outdone, retorts. I retorted with more than twice the power. "Daughter-in-law? Seriously? Are you living in the Stone Age? It's the 21st century. You're an insolent daughter-in-law. At least show up for family events." "No, thank you. My husband is free to go there, but I absolutely won't attend any family events. If you say anything more, I will divorce Mark." "This is outrageous. I won't allow it." "Feel free. I have no intention of dealing with you at all. Goodbye then." With that, I hung up the phone in frustration. Turning to my husband, I continued. "This is how it is. As I said earlier, if you side with your mother, I will get a divorce. If you understand my opinion, treat me equally. I'll overlook it this time."
Yeah, okay. I'll choose you, Tiara.
My husband remained silent for a while, but eventually he made the decision to start anew with me. Since then, I haven't visited my in-laws, and my mother-in-law hasn't contacted us. Perhaps my husband reflected on his past actions. Now, he regularly visits my parents. Of course, my parents don't take advantage of him. They treat him with genuine affection, just like a real son. We'll likely face various challenges in the future, but I want to overcome them together, with a husband who chose me. I want to get over it, day by day. I'm glad to know that Tiara got to cut ties with her husband's parents-in-laws. I didn't know what would have happened to Tiara's husband, but I'm glad he reflected on his actions and are now visiting Tiara's parents as well. I hope Tiara and her husband will lead a happy life as a married couple. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.